I call on our Borough Dean, Reverend Jean Wilson, to say prayers.
O God, we are meeting today in a spirit of cooperation and love for our communities in Oldham, to conduct matters of business. Guide our hearts and our minds in fairness, right thought and speech. Help us to respect one another's differing views and positions as we strive towards the drawing together of opinions to the one cause, which is to provide a better life for the people of this borough. Give us wisdom so that our debate may reach a successful outcome. Amen. And a few words by John Henry Cardinal Newman, who I think has a school up the road. It's called God Has Created Me. God has created me to do him some definite service. He has committed some work to me which he has not committed to another. I have a mission. I have a small part in a great work. I am a link in a chain, a bond of connection between persons. I shall do good. I shall do God's work. I shall be an instrument of peace. I do hope that you resonate with those words and that the I means yourself. These words he addressed to God. However, some of you may not be motivated by faith and yet still respond in a spiritual sense to that mission, to create a better place, a better world which honours, values and respects all people. May each one of you be blessed in your mission, which is sacrificial, is time-consuming, tough, and often hurts, as well as being a mission which is precious and of great benefit to the people in your wards. You have the power to influence and transform lives by your actions and by your words. Continue to be focused on #LoveOldham, Oldham the place, and Oldham the people.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I please ask all members to stay standing for a minute silence as we remember with love and gratitude Councillor Sue Eden, who died recently. Thank you. Please be seated. If members wish to remove their jackets, they may do so. Can Council please note, in accordance with the time limit set for the Council meetings, a guillotine will be effective 3.5 hours after the start of this meeting, unless Council agrees otherwise. May I remind members that this meeting will be streamed live on a webcast from the Council website and will be recorded and available on the Council website. Apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillors A. Alexandra, G. Alexandra, Councillor Ames, Azad, Councillor Cosgrove, Councillor Larkin, Councillor Harrison, Councillor Heffernan, Councillor Hudson, Councillor Kirkham, Councillor Kolowinski, Councillor Roberts, Councillor Sheldon, Councillor Turner and Councillor Wrigglesworth. Yeah. What's the point of order?
Mr Mayor, it's a point of order. Are we actually quorate now to proceed? Because
Yes, we are.
one of the meetings, if I remember, when the snow came down, this place was practically half empty when everybody was disappearing.
Yes,
Are we quorate?
Yes, we are.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Are there any other apologies? No. Communications. Tributes to Sue Deedon from elected members will be given at the next meeting of the Council in March. Our thoughts are with her family. Declarations of interest. If you have a disclosable pecuniary interest arising from ownership or occupation of a property in Oldham, please raise your hands to so declare. The Standards Committee are given a dispensation allowing members to have an interest arising from ownership of or occupation of property in Oldham to participate and vote on the setting of the council tax and matters directly related to such decisions, including the budget calculations. In addition, if you have a separate pecuniary, personal or prejudicial interest, please can you declare it now. There will also be a form circulated around the chamber for members to complete if they have a pecuniary, personal or prejudicial interest. Budget 2018-19. Does the Council agree to the suspension of Council Procedure Rules 10.7, Rules of Debate, to enable the Deputy Leader of the Council to exceed the time limit for his contribution in moving the administration budget to 15 minutes with a 30-second extension if required, and the Leader of the Opposition in moving the opposition budget a time limit of 10 minutes with a 30-second extension if required. All speakers will be limited to 4 minutes with a 30-second extension. Is that agreed? Thank you. Also, can I remind members that the regulations that have been implemented requiring recorded votes on the specific decisions at the budget meetings. I will inform you when a recorded vote is required. Does the Council note the draft minutes of the Cabinet held on the 19th of February 2018 as circulated? Item 4A. I call on Councillor Brownish to move and Councillor Jabbar to second the housing revenue account estimates for 2018-19 to 2021-22. Councillor Brownish.
Seconded, Mr Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Does the Council agree with the recommendations as circulated? All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Item 4B. I call on Councillor Jabbar to move and Councillor Stratton to second the Capital Strategy and Capital Programme 2018-19 to 2021-22. Councillor Jabbar.
Moved, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Stratton.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Does Council agree with the recommendations as circulated? Thank you. Item 4C. I call on Councillor Jabbar to move and Councillor Stratton to second the Treasury Management Strategy Statement 2018-19. Councillor Jabbar.
Moved, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Stratton.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Does Council agree with the recommendations as circulated? Thank you. Item 4D. I call on Councillor Jabbar to move and Councillor Stratton to second the statement of the Chief Financial Officer on reserves, robustness and of estimates and affordability and prudence of capital investments. Councillor Jabbar.
Moved, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Stratton.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Does Council agree with the recommendations as circulated? Item 4E. I call on Councillor Jabbar to move and Councillor Stratton to second the Revenue Budget 2018-19 and Medium-Term Financial Strategy 2018-19 to 2021-22. Councillor Jabbar.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And could I thank the Leader of the Council, Councillor Stratton, to give me the opportunity to move the budget for 18-19, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, local government is facing a funding crisis. On a national level, there has been dire warnings that there's simply not enough money in the system for local authorities to do its key duties. And this has been illustrated, unfortunately, by the situation that we've seen in Northamptonshire County Council. Lord Porter, the Conservative chair of the LGA, said last year the funding gap could be as high as 5.8 billion by March 2020. That's a massive black hole that strikes at the heart of our system of government. And most importantly, the people of Oldham, it puts a limitation on how we can develop our town and keep our services strong. It's no secret that since 2009-10, we've had to make savings over £208 million. And make no mistake, we're going to have to make further cuts going forward. This has eroded our workforce by 1/3 and forced us to cut many services that we offer here in Oldham. A few years ago, it would have been unthinkable to close services like Day Centre, but we were left with no choice. It has had a huge impact on our hard-working, loyal staff who've been forced to take 3 days unpaid leave each year, a significant financial impact on them. Despite these cuts, Mr Mayor, we remain resilient, and in Oldham, in true Oldham fashion, we're striving to make the best of the situation that's been presented to us. With massive increasing pressures in social cares, both in adult social care sector and more children and families requiring our help, we face more challenging situation in the coming years. And don't forget as well that we need to invest in Oldham. That's the only way we can try to stimulate business growth. That's because the way local government finance is set up, they want us to become self-sufficient and fund local services from business rates and council tax. Mr Mayor, that's going to be very difficult. The reason for that is because our council tax base and business tax base is so low. Growing our tax bases is something that can't be done overnight. It will take time. So what can we do about it? Well, firstly, reduce services and make savings. As I've said, since the cuts began, we've already taken out more than £200 million out from our budgets. And in the papers before you today, we're proposing to take another £6.7 million out. We've taken out 1/3 of our workforce. That's had a huge impact in terms of the way we provide services. In the meantime, Mr Mayor, services like adult social care, children's social care has been growing because of the pressure in demographics and because of the social changes that's been happening in our society. We are actually also engaged in a massive transformation of services to meet the demand. And residents are telling us that they want more online services, and we're responding to that. Secondly, Mr Mayor, we have lobbied our MPs to lobby government on the pressure that this council is facing. The leader and myself, we sit on a number of national bodies. We made our views very well known there. We responded to consultation in a constructive way to illustrate the challenges that we face here in Oldham. But is the government listening? And the answer to that is emphatically no, they're not. Look at the situation in Northamptonshire County Council. A Tory-controlled county council who has been issued with a Section 114 notice. First time in 20 years that has happened to a local government. Why? Because simply there isn't enough money in the system to provide for the services that we need to provide for our local residents. So, Mr. Mayor, we've been left with no option at all but to increase council tax. I don't want to do that. Personally, I feel council tax is already too high for a place like Oldham, but we have a legal responsibility to produce a balanced budget and to provide statutory services. And in order to do that, then I'm proposing today that we increase the general element of the council tax by 1.99% and a further 2%, especially to look after our elderly people. So in total, the council tax increase for 18-19 will be 3.99%. Now, I think, Mr. Mayor, that here in Oldham, we ask people to pay their council tax, and I'd like to think that we're using that money in a proper way to support the residents in Oldham. And I want to give you just one simple example. That in recent years, we set up Get Oldham Working. Very important initiative. And since it was set up, we've helped over 4,000 people to get jobs. And that's just a simple illustration about how we're doing our best to support residents here in Oldham under this challenging time. But what's the real reason why we're having to increase council tax? Well, because the government is cutting the funding that we used to get. And secondly, in my view, Mr. Mayor, the government is playing a trick with the people of Oldham. They're saying that we should raise money through local taxation to pay for national problems. So the increase in adult social care, the increase in children's social care is right across whole of the country. Many councils who have responsibility for those two areas are finding that their budget have gone up because of the demand. Now, why is government asking us to raise council tax in a place like this where we're deprived and the wage is so low compared to the national wage? And they're moving the blame from themselves to us. Council tax, Mr. Mayor, is one of the most regressive tax which hits the poorest the hardest that we've got in this country. And yet, what the government is saying, increase council tax to raise money to pay for services. Many of the services are statutory. I find that completely unacceptable. And we made these comments and feedback to government many occasions, but they would not accept. And as I said, even if a Tory council is in dire financial situation because the government won't provide adequate level of funding for the services that we're responsible for. I have complete sympathy with the residents of Oldham who have been given additional financial burdens to the increase in council tax. But we can't manage the budget without raising the council tax. That's the dilemma that we've got. But I just want to say again, Mr. Mayor, that this council will invest in a proper way to make sure the quality of people's lives in this town is better than what it is now. And I just want to say that despite the cuts, this council has delivered on a number of great projects, starting with the Old Town Hall. We won 14 awards for the design. In the first year, we've seen over 300,000 people visit it. In terms of generating business and in getting investment in the borough, we've had Audi coming to Oldham, DPD depot in Chadderton, Broad Green, Hollingwood Junction projects. We've invested in our highways with £6.2 million. We've had some fantastic town centre events, including Oldham Life, where 3,000 people came. Our greeting team has received national recognition. And today, Mr. Mayor, with your permission, I just want to pay my personal tribute to all the work they're doing in this area. They've managed to keep Oldham's roads open. Craig and his team, a big thank you on behalf of all of us here. tonight for the work that you do on behalf of the residents of Oldham. There's many other things, Mr. Mayor, that I can go and talk about. So North West Bloom City of the Year, looking after residents, and you know, the key theme behind this is that we're committed to looking after residents, looking after business, and looking after the environment. Mr. Mayor, this work will continue, and when the leader speaks, she will talk about a very clear, exciting vision that we've got for this borough, starting with the Oldham Town Centre Master Plan, which will enable us to rebuild the market, have a hotel, rebuild the civic centre, have a number of homes, and also a number of office spaces. And that will help to boost the finance of this council by getting more business rates. Transformation is something that we're working very hard on, and Oldham Cares is something that will help us to deliver a better social and health care, but also, I think, help us to deliver some financial saving going forward. We've got better digital services, and it seems to me, Mr. Mayor, the residents of Oldham are responding to that in a positive way, and incidentally, we're also achieving some cost saving doing that. Devolution, of course, provides many opportunities for us, and the leader's been working with GM Mayor on a number of projects, and I hope that will bring investment into the borough to improve the lives and the lives of current generation, but also actually secure a more prosperous situation for our future generation. So, Mr. Mayor, despite this difficult time that's been handed to us by the government because of the cuts in our funding, I want to offer a message of hope for Oldham as a whole. I want to say that this Labour administration is completely committed to delivering the things I've said earlier in my speech, and we will regenerate this town. We will secure and continue to regenerate this town. Before I finish, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say that this budget process has been a long and hard one, and a number of people worked on this project extremely hard. So I just want to pay my personal tribute to them, starting with the Chief Executive, Dr. Caroline Wilkins, her executive team, and of course our wonderful Borough Treasurer, Anne Ryans, and her team, some of them who are here. Without their help and dedication, we would not been able to, I would not have been able to bring a balanced budget before you for 18-19. I'll just finish by saying this. Mr. Mayor, I feel we're in an incredibly privileged position to be leading this town. And it is our job, all of us, in these difficult times, find ways to take this town forward. And we're absolutely committed to doing that. And I hope that you will join me in supporting the budget as I printed in the Green Book. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Stretton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Seconding budget proposals in this chamber is never a task I look forward to, and this year is no different. An incredible amount of hard work goes into this process, so I would like to start by thanking Abdul Jabbar as Lead Member for Finance, Anne Ryans and her finance staff, and all those members and officers who have been involved in this huge task. I also know that many of them are already thinking hard about what happens next year and beyond, which is an increasingly ominous undertaking. I want to be clear with residents that putting up council tax is something we would never want to do. Yet Oldham, like many other local authorities, is left with no choice. Councils up and down the country know that the council tax rises they have planned will not even offset the cuts they've had to make to services. In Oldham, we've managed this process extremely well, and have so far avoided cuts in some services that many other places have had to take. But you can only dodge a bullet for so long. Councils in England are putting council tax up to levels that will raise an estimated 1.1 billion in the next financial year. But this doesn't cover the 1.4 billion cut from central government funding. The cuts from government are not sustainable. And this is also not a party political issue. Local government are united on this. Tory-controlled Northamptonshire County Council, in the heart of Middle England, essentially declared itself bankrupt earlier this month, when their auditors, KPMG, issued a notice warning they looked unable to set a balanced budget. This is the first notice of this kind issued by an auditor to a local authority. It imposes a ban on all new expenditure, but even that won't make the savings that they need to deliver the budget. Now, if Northamptonshire was a Labour-controlled authority, I can only imagine what the government, and indeed some national newspapers, might be saying right now. So don't let this government fool you that raising council tax is an Oldham problem. It's a national problem driven by the deliberate policies of a government that promised it would challenge inequalities and the burning injustices that mean people are left behind. Yet it has delivered few answers on how to do that, and it certainly hasn't provided the funding needed to do it. In fact, quite the opposite. Councils cannot keep dipping into reserves or selling buildings and land to avoid the next crisis. Most councils' adult and children's services are now vastly underfunded. Worst of all, people in places like Oldham are being told to pay more but expect and get less for their money. That means key services are at peril up and down the country. Children's centres, libraries, leisure centres, museums, parks, road repairs. The government's solution to local funding is to make councils like ours rely in future on business rate income. But as things stand, that system will just perpetuate inequality and make them worse. Places with bigger business rate bases are better funded, and the places with smaller business rates will simply get poorer by comparison. The gap will inevitably widen, and the rich will get richer, and the poor will get poorer. We are now at a major crossroad in the future of local government. Next year, for the very first time, it is projected that our business rates will constitute more of our income than what we get from central government. We urgently need clarity from government on what they are going to do. Business rate retention is not a level playing field, and there is no clarity from government on whether they will include a safety net to ensure poorer councils don't lose out further on income. Our finance team, cabinet and officers have worked wonders so far to avoid frontline cuts wherever possible, but they are not magicians. What councils like Oldham need is fair funding and clarity about the future. We will continue to stand up for Oldham and lobby whatever government we may have to fix the inequity in local authority funding arrangements and to give us fair funding. But for now, Mr Mayor, it is with a heavy heart that I second these administration budget proposals.
Thank you, Councillor Chetwin. We have an amendment, item 4F. I call on Councillor McCann to move and Councillor Sykes to second the amendment to the budget as circulated and detailed in the Council summons. Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I rise to propose the budget amendment of the Liberal Democrat group. I think I'll place on record my thanks to my colleagues, Howard Sykes and Diane Williamson, and our excellent officers for their support in helping me draw our proposals. Once again, the Conservative government is wedded to austerity. It has not been generous in its financial settlement with local government, and I think the Municipal Journal actually, put it beautifully on the 19th of December when it said, "There is no long-term plan to balance books beyond 2020. I think Abdul would recognise that. I think they would also say that they highlighted the Secretary of State's speech. The highlight was a plan to let local government put a further 1% on council tax. Local government finance is now so woefully outdated and underfunded, Mr Mayor, the cash raised is unlikely to make a dent in the deficit. The deficit is in billions, 5.8 billion, and they're offering to let us raise 227 million as local authorities generally. It's the financial sense of the madhouse. It really does not work. The Local Government Association, Lord Porter, a Conservative, says large-scale national problems can't be fixed by raising random amounts of money across the country. They should come out of national funds, not local taxes. And that's because they are national problems, not just local problems. It really is mad. Anyway, as a result of the continued parsimony and lack of planning of Chancellor Hammond and his Tory cabinet colleagues, we now see a situation where local councils are facing bankruptcy, and Northamptonshire has already been mentioned. And my fear is they build a flagship building and then have to sell it, and I bet it'll be at a loss. But that is not long-term planning, because they don't know what's going to happen after 2020. And this morning, actually, it was on the site that Northamptonshire has to do further cuts to try and balance its books. Oldham is not in that position, and I think that reflects many years of prudence and actually cutting money to try and get some return on it. We've worked well. It's shameful the government has compounded this calumny by backtracking on their promise about local authorities retaining business rates. Liberal Democrats will continue to press the government ministers to honour their promise that they made to councils that they could keep this money to improve local services, and the word for me is improve. It's not a question of enabling survival or manage reductions. The word they used was improve. I don't know what planet they're on, but it ain't Oldham planet. Our local economy will benefit if the council had more money. It will be invested to try and get money back in, create jobs, create new opportunities. And this borough has a good record of that. So despite the financial situation in Oldham, we've been blessed with a dedicated and very, very competent Treasury team, backed, I think, by members from all parties who have cooperated over several administrations in adapting to our ever-worsening position. Although in Oldham we've been obliged to make tens of millions of cuts, and Councillor Jabbar gave you the figure, we've been fortunate in being able to do so without closing vital services or failing to collect the bins, etc. But all Manchester residents will have to pay to support Mr Burnham as Mayor, when actually I'd hoped from all the government statements that the government millions would have financed Mr Burnham and Manchester as a body, not put more pressure on places like Oldham. That was not the idea of devolution. So I commend the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member Finance, Abdul Jabbar, and our Borough Treasurer, Anne Ryans, and the members of their teams for their hard work in once more bringing a balanced budget. We support the vast majority of cuts proposed by this administration in its budget tonight, and we shall also support the 3.99% rise in council tax to help balance our books. We must do this because of expediency, not because any of us want to do this. The 1% increase available to Oldham out of interest would yield about £820,000. Many of our residents are already on the borderline of going into debt, or they're probably in debt. So one thing they don't need is more money taken from them. But it does leave a long-term problem that if we don't increase the base, which Councillor Barnes referred to, the base yield of this council, we have problems, which is why it's vital to get some decent housing that yields money and some decent businesses into this borough. So, our amendments, I make no apology that they follow a rather familiar pattern, because actually we think it's good to spend less on admin, there's not a lot left to cut really, and more on services. In the past, Labour councillors have voted against some of our proposals, but interestingly the administration has sometimes adopted them in subsequent years, and that is good. because it is our job to challenge, to ask and to present ideas. In our amendment this year, we propose finding further savings in civic centre bureaucracy and to free up more money to invest in improving highways, tackling fly tipping, and Councillor Brownridge must be going mad with the volumes of fly tipping. It's crazy. And it's just wasted money. And antisocial behaviour and crime to try and make the borough streets better and cleaner and our homes safer. And my colleague, Councillor Sykes, will tell you more about our investment proposals. We think we should actually be waging a bit of a war on waste by constantly seeking to free up money to support the services that are most valued by our ratepayers. This year, we have identified 423,000 in further savings that can be put back into frontline services. We believe that some of the amounts are rather small, but actually we're now getting down to looking at small amounts and improving disciplinary procedures, tackling absenteeism, reducing staff car allowances for low mileage users, cutting spending on agency staff and consultants. I know we always look at that one. Significantly reducing expenditure on communications and marketing. All these things may be rather small amounts, but actually they mount and they enable you to do things when they're put together. We have only modest savings of 3,000 and 13,000, for instance, on our issues about absenteeism or disciplinary issues. But actually, year on year, these figures can mount, and other councils have done work on this. Keeping staff for many weeks or months on full pay whilst disciplinary matters grind on is not really nowadays acceptable. We have to look at systems and get them efficient. We spend too much on communications and publicity, is my view, and it is better to get back to basics. Get the basics right, good highways, and I'm so pleased to see that this is starting to happen. Clean streets, gullies, bins, responsive social care, good schools. We don't need to sort of publicise it when it's starting to happen on the streets. We're also proposing further investment in bus lane enforcement, so fines can be applied against drivers who illegally use bus lanes. And I fully support the introduction in the administration's budget. I just think we can actually increase it and put more of these lanes on active. I hate to see drivers selfishly sailing past the rest of us who queue and follow the rules. So actually the people that will be paying, it's a voluntary payment for being ignorant and selfish. That's my take on them. So while there will be a cost in introducing CCTV, etc., that is worth paying because these people over time will contribute money. Small amounts, but I do think that small amounts add up. There's an old saying, look after the pennies and the pounds look after themselves. Well, we're into millions and billions with this government, but actually Oldham has done rather well at looking after pennies at the moment. I would reiterate our view that a review of trade union support is long overdue. We've been promised one, and I think a serious look is now required. Oldham council taxpayers spend about £150,000 for trade unions. Tameside spends about half that. What is different, really, between Oldham and Tameside? We have again called for a reduction in councillors from 60 to 40, and I know people will say it is well rehearsed, but the offering is £190,000. And today I picked out a little note that says that Dorset is going down to reduce the number of councillors from 331 to about 180. I know this follows a merger of some councils, but it is interesting that the Secretary of State for Local Government has approved it and passed it. I think this indicates the way it is going. And indeed, Carlisle Council, a Labour administration, is looking at the number of councillors opposed by the Conservatives opposition. So the harsh reality is that Oldham Council will be facing further deep cuts in funding during the time remaining for this Conservative government. I don't think, rather, there's much hope of this government actually realising the damage it is doing, Mr Mayor. I move the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Can I call on Councillor Sykes?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I rise to second the amendment tonight to the administration's proposals. I'll try and be as brief as I can, Mr Mayor. Local government, as the three speakers have said before, continues to be butchered, and I use the word deliberately, and it's butchered disproportionately in terms of other public services by the Conservative government's so-called continued adherence to so-called austerity. No wonder the two Tory councillors on this council can't even be bothered to turn up tonight. I hope they're at home, hanging their head in shame. But I'll bet you they're not. The provisional local government finance settlement announced in December did not bring us the early Christmas present we wanted. It simply represented yet more pain for us to absorb. The Liberal Democrat group recognises in our financial situation the administration has once more had to reduce overall spending whilst regrettably increasing council tax by nearly 4%. Though necessary, we will support the rise to pay for improvements to adult social care and services. This is a bit reluctantly, but we will support it because we know many residents in our borough have not seen an increase in their take-home pay for several years, whilst facing a constant rise in the cost of living of other basic necessities. I am only glad, and I really am glad, and I think it's something we need to be proud of, there's been cross-party support to maintain what is a very generous council tax support scheme at its current level for those on lowest incomes and to help them combat this and fight and reduce their bills. I now want to return to our amendment, Mr Mayor. Councillor McCann highlighted some of the additional savings we would make in order to pay for some of the extra items we would wish. I'll explain, as John said, a little bit more where we want to invest those savings to improve highways, tackle fly tipping, address antisocial behaviour and crime and make our borough's streets better and cleaner and obviously our communities safer. We're proposing to spend 400,000 of our savings this year, and it's not everything. We are making a contribution to balances to invest more in highways, to restore cuts to our youth services, to tackle fly tipping that blights our communities, and for public safety measures such as alligating and CCTV. I will look at each of these proposals briefly in turn. Welcome the recent announcement of 6.2 million investment in roads. We are proposing an additional investment of 5 million this year for next year. Although this is welcome, it's not the first time we've heard this proposal in this chamber. We made the same proposal that's in the Labour budget in the last two budget amendments, and those investments were failed to be supported by Labour and others in this chamber. If it's suddenly right to do it now, why was it not right to do it then? Especially as in the last 2 years our road surfaces and pavements have been getting steadily worse. But in 2018 the Liberal Democrats want to be more ambitious. In our proposals we can afford to fund an additional 5 million in highway and infrastructure improvements in 1920, thus sustaining the level investment for 1 more year, making our roads smoother and safer. Our proposals represent welcome news indeed for motorists, users of public transport and pedestrians. We're equally concerned that a 100,000 reduction in funding for our youth services will lead to more instances of antisocial behaviour, increased pressure on already overburdened children's social care services and on the police. It's a false economy, if ever there was one, Mr Mayor. Through our savings, we would find money to restore the funding. We also want, and this is very important, a proper service level agreement be drawn up to ensure that funding is focused on providing youth services in each of the districts, not simply at Madlow, which is a town centre venue which many of our young people are unable or reluctant to access or travel to. We also want to make 650,000 available over 2 years to tackle environment, crime and public safety. Money to apprehend cowboy fly tippers, money to establish a fund for applications for alligators and CCTV, and money for people to feel safe in their homes and communities. So, Mr Mayor, in summary, we will deliver, or our amendment does, better roads, better and more local youth services, less antisocial behaviour and safer communities, less fly tipping and cleaning the streets. These are all the basic priorities that the borough's residents want. It's common sense, it's what our postbags as elected members are full of, and it's what we would deliver if Council approves the amendment tonight, which I urge them to vote for, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much.
Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? Councillor Jabbar, you have a wish your right to reply.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be brief. Yeah, thanks to Howard and John for supporting most of our proposal tonight. Look, as I've said, the leaders said, the real issue is there isn't enough money in the system. If there were, we won't be doing some of the things we said that we're doing in this book, and some of the things you're saying would do. We do need a fairer funding for local government, and currently there's a consultation out there. I hope your party will respond to that. We will, of course. But can I just touch on, Mr Mayor, on some of the things they raised today? So, investment in roads. Look, you know, we discuss this on a regular basis, and our secondary routes are getting in a state where it needs more investment. We need £18 million of investment to get them to some kind of decent standard. Have we got 18 million? We haven't. So this isn't off our radar. It is on our radar, and when we are able to do it, we will do it. But I think just to say that it was your proposal previously and we didn't do it, and why are we doing it now? Well, the answer to that question is we evaluate the condition of the roads, and when we feel that we're able to put investment in, we are doing it. An example of that is now that we didn't put 5 million, as you called it. We put in 6.2. Why? Because that's the bare minimum that we need to do right now, and we're doing it. So rest assured, right, we will protect our roads. But, you know, if I had the money, we would not spend another 5 million. We'd spend 18 million in total, another 12 million on top of the 6.2. But that's not the position that we're in. And that's the difficulty that you've got to accept. In terms of the youth service, I really do think that you've not fully understood what we're doing there. The post has not been deleted. The posts have been transferred, and Madlow's agreed to retain those posts, but we're not paying for them. So I think you need to look at that. Now, in terms of the proposal about LED lighting, yes, we'll look at that. We're in a PFI contracts, and we're moving towards using LED lights. And I know the benefit of that. I'm the lead member for low carbon. Do I get that? I hope I do. And I'm very passionate about that. And if there's any saving, we will take that. But can I just pick up on the major saving proposal that's in your papers, which is the reduction in marketing communication? I have to disagree with that strongly. I tell you why. Because we're in a channel shift at the moment. We're trying to change people's habit, people's behaviour. We're trying to persuade people from using face-to-face services to go on online, to move away from telephone. And how do you do that? With a resident of 250,000 people. You can't do it by a policy here and policy there. You need an active communication team which can tell people and engage people in a meaningful way so they understand and they respond to what we're trying to do. And I don't think this is the right time to do it. And we've got to deliver some key messages, especially when the Oldham Chronicle is not there. So I do hope that you have a different view on that. And finally, the issue around reducing number of councillors from 60 to 40. Look, Manchester City Council has done a boundary review recently, and it's been implemented this year. They've not reduced their councillors. They haven't reduced it. Why? Because the number of electorate in each of the ward has remained broadly same. And, you know, the problem that you got with your proposal, and Councillor Fielding made an excellent point at the PVFM meeting, was that it's not up to us to decide whether we can reduce the number of councillors. It's up to the Boundary Commission, so you can make a proposal. Whether they will agree to it or not, it's not in our hands. So I really do think, right, that you need to have a look at that again. But, I mean, I'll just conclude, Mr. Mayor, by saying, to be honest, what they're proposing and what we're doing, there isn't much difference. It's only on the fringes of in terms of the monetary value for the proposal. Would we have been able to accept those? We would have done it if we had the money. We've not done it because what we want to do is we want to invest in this town to make sure that this town is a place where it can offer a better housing offer, a cultural offer, employment offer, retail offer, a leisure offer. And that will benefit everyone in this town. And that's why we've got a fantastic town centre master plan. And we will implement on that. And that will require a fantastic amount of investment for ourselves, but from our key partners as well. And I reiterate again, Mr. Mayor, these proposals have been looked at very carefully. They've been to PVFM and they've been scrutinised. And I think with the help of the officers, we've done a reasonable job to bring these proposals before you. I would once again ask you to support the proposal that's before you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Does Councillor McCann wish to reply? No. Okay. Can we move on to the recorded vote?
Councillor Ahmed? Sorry? Councillor Akhtar? Councillor Ali?
Against.
Councillor Ball? Councillor Marie Bashforth? Councillor Steve Bashforth? Councillor Bates? Councillor Briggs? Councillor Brock? Councillor Brownridge? Councillor Chatterton? Councillor Chauhan? Councillor Dean? Councillor Fielding? Councillor Gary? Councillor Gloucester? Councillor Goodwin? Councillor Hack? Councillor Harkness? Councillor Hewitt? Councillor Aftab Hussain? Councillor Fida Hussain? Councillor Iqbal? Councillor Jabbar? Councillor Jack? Councillor Malik? Councillor McCann? Councillor McLaren? Councillor Moores? Councillor Murphy? Councillor Mushtaq? Councillor Fithian? Councillor Price? Councillor Rayman? Councillor Roberts? Oh, sorry. It's Councillor Salamat? Councillor Shuttleworth? Councillor Stretton? Councillor Sykes? Councillor Tour? Councillor Ur-Rahman? Councillor Williams? Councillor Williamson? Councillor Kumer?
Against. I declare the amendment lost. Council will now debate the original substantive motion. Does any member wish to speak on the original substantive motion? Councillor Bates.
On. Have you switched me off already?
In your right seat, Warren.
All right. Thought you switched me off already. I wish to speak regarding the budget, which you've opened up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's the same faces and the same speeches year in, year out. We are not getting enough financial support from central government that we require the Tories who are not here tonight. I thought they'd been here, actually. Let's hang on a minute. Councillor McCann, you mentioned something about devolution. Andy Burnham getting some money. The Mayor, devolution Mayor. We now come under devolution now. Jim signed it and came back with no money. All we need now, in my opinion, is a strong, independent-minded council with the political will and the bottle so we can rebalance our local priorities of all parties, and I mean those driven by whipped agendas based on party political priorities. We divert to the actual needs, which is welcome. I can't understand why the Tories have given this, and aspirations of our local folk. Protect green spaces, support clean energy, look after our poor and disabled, those with genuine special needs. It's getting exciting, isn't it? Especially our children's future and grandchildren, Mr. Mayor. But, and it's a big but, we have to have the political will, Mr. Mayor, and also the bottle. And get rid of the cobwebs overshadowing us year in and year out. Mr. Mayor, I believe we should have a rethink now. We come under devolution. In fact, we should have a meeting like this with our highly paid officers.
Councillor Bates?
Yeah.
Can you stick to the, please, can you stick to the budget?
Stick to the budget? Yeah. Well, the highly paid officers haven't been touched in their the revenue. Can you
stick to the budget, please?
Who, in my opinion, are running the council. Tell them, under devolution now, they work for us. They work for us.
Councillor Bates, I'm going to have to ask you to sit down if unless you stick to the budget.
I'm sticking to the budget because I've got a plan B now.
Right.
I've got a plan B. I've got a plan B.
I was worried about your
Let's
plan
be
A.
honest. Money has been squandered. Now, I've got a list here, and they're talking about money that's I'm managing. I'm not going to, if you want me to give it, yeah, I'll tell you here of millions and millions of pounds that have been squandered, if you want me to do that, but I'm not going to do it, because I'm
Can you stick to the budget, please?
Pardon?
Can you stick to the budget?
I'm speaking to the budget because we're skint, and I know some of the reasons why. And, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, do you understand the word devolution, the position we're in? Because I've got it all here, I've looked it up.
Councillor Bates.
We take over.
Councillor Bates.
We take over, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bates. Councillor Bates, you're not sticking to the budget. I'm going to ask you to sit down.
We take over the power.
Councillor Jabbar, do you have a...
Can't you handle it, Mr. Mayor? We take over now.
Right. Councillor Jabbar, you have a right to reply.
Yeah.
You exercise your right to reply.
Mr. Mayor, all I'd say to Councillor Bates is that this organisation is audited through a very reputable auditor. Very, very reputable auditor. And all you need to look at is their report. And they give us all green indicators for value for money. So if you're really interested in looking at how our money is spent and how our finances is done, please read the auditor's report and you'll see how this organization's finances are managed and how dedicated our staffs are in terms of what they do. And it really is unacceptable for you to stand up in a council meeting to criticize officers. It's not fair, because I know many officers who start work here at 7 o'clock and they don't go home sometime till 8, 9. Well, you might say, oh, but as I said, well, listen, this is beyond their pay, beyond their contract. And they do it because, right, they care about the people of Oldham and they care about Oldham Council. And I repeat my thanks to them. So please be careful in what you say and how you say it. I've got nothing else to say, Mr. Mayor, except to ask everyone in this chamber, please support the proposals before you. Thank you.
Am I entitled to come back? No. This is fine old English justice.
Thank you, Councillor Jabbar. Can I move to the recorded vote, please?
Councillor Ahmed, Councillor Akhtar, Councillor Ali, Councillor Ball, Councillor Marie Bashforth, Councillor Steve Bashforth, Councillor Bates,
Abstain.
Councillor Briggs, Councillor Brock, Councillor Brownridge, Councillor Chatterton, Councillor Chauhan, Councillor Dean, Councillor Fielding, Councillor Gary, Councillor Gloucester, Councillor Goodwin, Councillor Hack, Councillor Harkness, Councillor Hewitt, Councillor Aftab Hussain, Councillor Fida Hussain, Councillor Iqbal, Councillor Jabbar, Councillor Jacks, Councillor Malik, Councillor McCann, Councillor McLaren, Councillor Moores, Councillor Murphy, Councillor Mushtaq, Councillor Fithian, Councillor Price, Councillor Rehman, Councillor Salamat, Councillor Shuttleworth, Councillor Stretton, Councillor Sykes, Councillor Tour, Councillor Uraman, Councillor Williams, Councillor Williamson, Councillor Cumer.
I declare the motion carried.
Surprise.
Council must now know on the resolutions detailed within the summons. Does Council note the agreed council tax base for the year 2018-19 as agreed on the 18th of December 2017? Agreed. Does the Council approve the council tax requirement for the Council's own purposes for 2018-19 as detailed within the summons? Does any member wish to speak? Could we have a move to a recorded vote?
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed, Councillor Akhtar, Councillor Ali, Councillor Ball, Councillor Marie Bashforth, Councillor Steve Bashforth, Councillor Bates,
Abstain.
Councillor Briggs, Councillor Brock, Councillor Brownridge, Councillor Chatterton, Councillor Chauhan, Councillor Dean, Councillor Fielding, Councillor Gary, Councillor Gloucester, Councillor Goodwin, Councillor Hack, Councillor Harkness, Councillor Hewitt, Councillor Aftab Hussain, Councillor Fida Hussain, Councillor Iqbal, Councillor Jabbar, Councillor Jacks, Councillor Malik, Councillor McCann, Councillor McLaren, Councillor Moores, Councillor Murphy, Councillor Mushtaq, Councillor Fithian, Councillor Price, Councillor Rehman, Councillor Salamat, Councillor Shuttleworth, Councillor Stretton, Councillor Sykes, Councillor Tour, Councillor Uraman, Councillor Williams, Councillor Williamson and Councillor Cumer.
Does Council agree that the amounts as detailed within the summons calculated for the year 2018-19 in accordance with sections 31A to 36 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992? Any member wish to speak? Move to a recorded vote, please.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed, Councillor Akhtar, Councillor Ali, Councillor Ball, Councillor Marie Bashforth, Councillor Steve Bashforth, Councillor Bates,
Abstain.
Councillor Briggs, Councillor Brock, Councillor Brownridge, Councillor Chatterton, Councillor Chauhan, Councillor Dean, Councillor Fielding, Councillor Gary, Councillor Gloucester, Councillor Goodwin, Councillor Hack, Councillor Harkness, Councillor Hewitt, Councillor Aftab Hussain, Councillor Fida Hussain, Councillor Councillor Iqbal, Councillor Jabbar, Councillor Jacks, Councillor Malik, Councillor McCann, Councillor McLaren, Councillor Moores, Councillor Murphy, Councillor Mushtaq, Councillor Fithian, Councillor Price, Councillor Rehman, Councillor Salamat, Councillor Shuttleworth, Councillor Stretton, Councillor Sykes, Councillor Tour, Councillor Uraman, Councillor Williams, Councillor Williamson, Councillor Cumer.
4. Does Council note for the year 2018-19 the Mayoral Police and Crime Commissioner Precept and the Mayoral General Precept, including fire services, for Greater Manchester have been issued to the Council as detailed in the summons. Does any member wish to comment? Does the Council agree to set the aggregated amounts as detailed within the summons as the amount of council tax for 2018-19 for each part of its area and for each of the categories of dwellings? Does any member wish to speak? Can I move to a recorded vote, please?
Councillor Ahmed, Councillor Akhtar, Councillor Ali, Councillor Ball, Councillor Bashforth, Councillor Steve Bashforth, Councillor Bates,
Abstain.
Councillor Briggs, Councillor Brock, Councillor Brownridge, Councillor Chatterton, Councillor Chauhan, Councillor Dean, Councillor Fielding, Councillor Gary, Councillor Gloucester, Councillor Goodwin, Councillor Hack, Councillor Harkness, Councillor Hewitt, Councillor Aftab Hussain, Councillor Fida Hussain, Councillor Iqbal, Councillor Jabbar, Councillor Jacks, Councillor Malik, Councillor McCann, Councillor McLaren, Councillor Moores, Councillor Murphy, Councillor Mushtaq, Councillor Fithian, Councillor Price, Councillor Rehman, Councillor Salamat, Councillor Shuttleworth, Councillor Stretton, Councillor Sykes, Councillor Tour, Councillor Uraman, Councillor Williams, Councillor Williamson and Councillor Cumer.
4. That concludes the business for this evening.
damp squid tonight. Damp squid.